Homage to Buddha Shakyamuni, homage to Manjushri, homage to all the lineage masters. Profound and subtle dharma is rarely encountered in eons. Now we can follow it. May we realize the Tathagata's meaning. To liberate all sentient beings, please generate unsurpassed bodhicitta. Next, we will discuss the essence of clear light, an overview of the Guhyagarbha Tantra. In the essence of clear light, we are now focusing on the section on samayas. Regarding the samayas, there are 5 root samayas. In the verses of the Guhyagarbha Tantra, specifically in the 19th chapter, there is a verse about the root samayas. I remember this verse. It should be in the Key to the Treasury that was recently distributed to you. It explains the first samaya, not to abandon the unsurpassed. We touched on this yesterday. What exactly is the unsurpassed? The unsurpassed is the ultimate fundamental nature where all phenomena are primordially pure and equal in the Dharmakaya. This is the supreme and ultimate truth of all phenomena. Therefore, we must never abandon this truth of reality. Abandoning it would violate the first of the 5 root samayas. There are 2 ways to not abandon it, or rather 2 ways to uphold it. As mentioned yesterday, the first is to accept it through devotion. Accepting it through devotion means relying on the scriptural teachings. Even if we have not perceived it through direct perception in our daily lives, we can still gain conviction through the process of logical inference. It is like not seeing a fire behind a mountain ourselves, but knowing it is there by observing the smoke and using reasoning, or like knowing that a pillar is impermanent because it is a created thing. Through the inference of its creation, we understand the impermanence of the pillar. This same logic applies here as well. Similarly, even if you haven't personally seen that all phenomena are primordially pure and empty, which is the nature of purity and evenness, and even if you have not witnessed it with your own wisdom, you can still rely on authoritative scriptures for validation. Since it is taught in the most trusted Buddhist tantras, it must be pure, or because the Vajra words of the lineage masters proclaim that the nature of all phenomena is pure and equal. At that point, you will develop an irreversible certainty. This is also called not abandoning the unsurpassed or accepting it. We discussed these 2 aspects yesterday. By upholding it through certainty, one will never regress. If we only rely on devotion, we might still lose our resolve. If we use certainty, which is the latter method, we will never regress. When we uphold the primordial purity of all phenomena with certainty, there is no turning back. One is capable of ending the lower paths with this certainty. What exactly can this certainty eliminate? It prevents re-entering the paths of the Shravakas, non-Buddhists, or worldly ways. Their views hold that the essence of all phenomena is neither empty nor pure. Relying on this certainty of purity and evenness, all such misconceptions will be utterly eliminated. Therefore, the one who holds this view is called a Vajra holder. Since holding the Vajra-like nature of mantra in one stream of mind, we can lower the volume a bit. Yesterday the volume was too low and today it is too high, creating a constant buzzing sound. The control room staff is in the glass booth now, so the volume of the sound they are adjusting keeps going up and down. It gives the potential to subdue the negativities of samsara and nirvana. This means that if we possess what was described earlier, that is, truly developing irreversible certainty in the nature where all phenomena are primordially pure and equal, then a person with such certainty can be called a Vajra holder. The Venerable Milarepa was once an ordinary person. After receiving the Mahamudra Pith instructions from Marpalotsawa, he became a Vajra holder. Later, when his disciples called him a Vajra holder of the state of Buddhahood, he said they could call him that. Why is such a person called a Vajra holder? We also often use the term Vajra master. For a Vajra master, simply having the title Vajra is not enough. It is because the master's stream of mind truly possesses this irreversible certainty in the purity and evenness of phenomena. It is like a diamond that no other metal can destroy. So why is such a person called a Vajra holder? Because in their stream of mind, they uphold the Vajra-like suchness of mantra. This refers to the Vajra-like right view of the suchness of mantra, realizing that purity and evenness are the very essence of all phenomena. This state is indestructible, unassailable, and inextinguishable, just like a Vajra. When someone possesses this realization in their stream of mind, we can call them a Vajra master, a Vajra Tathagata, a Vajra holder, and so on. Generally in mantra, whether one is giving empowerments, teaching, or is a practitioner who truly upholds the path, One must possess irreversible certainty and purity and evenness within their mind stream. There is irreversibility through devotion and irreversibility through certainty. The best is irreversibility through certainty, which is absolute. This kind of certainty is truly extraordinary. It has the power to destroy the negativities of samsara and nirvana. It can subdue all the deficiencies or degenerations of both samsara and nirvana. What is the degeneration of samsara? It is being attached to samsara and falling into the extreme of permanence. And for nirvana, its degeneration is falling into the extreme of cessation. Thus, all these degenerations of falling into either permanence or cessation will be completely destroyed. Because such a Vajra master or Vajra holder possesses this supreme right view of mantra in their stream of mind, they will never fall into the extreme of attachment to samsara again, nor into the extreme of the cessation of nirvana. They have this extraordinary power. The above explains the possession of the three jewels. We discussed this earlier yesterday. A person who possesses the view of purity and evenness will not abandon the three jewels. They will not abandon the three jewels of the ground, path, and fruition. In short, one will not abandon the three jewels in any form. At the same time, one accepts the absolute reality of all phenomena. There are two ways to accept this reality. This has already been explained. Following this, the text continues, a person with such right view will not abandon bodhicitta. Genuine bodhicitta will also not be abandoned, since the ultimate, genuine, fundamental nature of the inseparable truth of purity and evenness is being sustained. With such right view, one will abandon neither genuine bodhicitta nor relative bodhicitta. What is genuine bodhicitta? As you all know, generally speaking, it is the meditative wisdom possessed by bodhisattvas on the first bhumi and above. This meditative wisdom is beyond all thought and speech. It is a state that is inconceivable and free from all conceptual elaborations. Therefore, when one has the view of purity and evenness, one will never abandon genuine bodhicitta. Why? Because this view actually means upholding the meaning of the most ultimate reality, which is purity and evenness. This is in fact genuine bodhicitta. For someone who has realized Dzogchen or the absolute reality of the Dharmadhatu, would they abandon genuine bodhicitta? They would never do so. Relative bodhicitta will not be forsaken. Why would they not forsake relative bodhicitta? Since one has generated the bodhicitta based on the motivation and action of accomplishing Buddhahood in order to protect all sentient beings from negativity, that is relative bodhicitta. Generally speaking, what is relative bodhicitta? Relative bodhicitta is the wish to rescue all infinite beings from the temporary suffering of birth, old age, sickness, and death in samsara, and from the degeneration of birth, old age, sickness, and death. It is using great compassion towards sentient beings so they can leave the three realms of samsara and attain liberation. Simultaneously, it is the aspiration to achieve that state oneself in order to liberate others. It is the intention to practice for the perfect enlightenment of a Buddha, to give rise to that perfect aspiration and the application of the 6 paramitas and myriad virtues. This is relative bodhicitta. As is often mentioned in the Ornament of Clear Realization, the mind that wishes for beings to be free from suffering and aims for the result of Buddhahood to attain enlightenment is what we call relative bodhicitta. One will not forsake such relative bodhicitta either. If we do not forsake the unsurpassed, then we will not forsake either genuine bodhicitta or relative bodhicitta. Why is this the case? The reason is explained here. It was just mentioned that through such a view, by seeing with conviction that the state of absolutely benefiting limitless beings as a Buddha can be accomplished, one is able to permanently bring an end to the impure mind that engages lower paths, including giving up on Buddhahood, discouragement, disdain towards samsara, and the like. Therefore, if the view of purity and evenness is not forsaken, one fully sees the Buddhahood that is eternal, all-pervasive, and performs the benefit of infinite beings. It is not something external. Rather, it is present right now within the mind stream of every single being. Every being, all beings must be liberated. To truly benefit them, this Buddhahood is present right now. And in this way, it is not just mere lip service. One actually permanently brings an end to the regression, discouragement, or disdain towards samsara regarding the generation of bodhicitta. All stains of self-interest and conceptual characteristics will be completely abandoned. They will not exist. Therefore, in the views of secret mantra, when we recite certain verses for generating bodhicitta, we sometimes recite these secret mantra verses. Namkyanesa namka kan lama yitam kan sanje chudang gen baba dagdang ru kibircha dagdam thai semchena yene sanje yembala yembershi bidan shanchim chodo semkyedo. The latter of the two verses is also often chanted when practicing guru yoga. It is also stated in the tantras. I believe it is in the Tantra of the Rare King, a very rare one. The Tantra of the Rare King says, all limitless sentient beings, and I have always been Buddha. Knowing this to be our nature, I generate bodhicitta, infinite, boundless beings, and I are primordially Buddhas. It is just that we haven't realized it. Once we have realized this nature of ourselves and all beings, we continue to generate bodhicitta from within that view. In fact, generating bodhicitta is simply recognizing the nature. There is primordially no difference between me and other beings. We are all primordially within the state of perfect Buddhahood. True generation of bodhicitta is like this. In Chinese, Samyak Sambuddha means perfectly enlightened. In the term Anuttara Samyak Sambodhi, Sam refers to being correct or perfect. Thus, in Chinese texts, Samyak Sambodhi consistently corresponds to perfect universal enlightenment. To truly give rise to the mind directed towards such perfect enlightenment is what we call generating the bodhicitta. Nowadays, many people think that someone's intent is very great, meaning that they have donated a lot of money. Their intent is very great. Please give them a blessing. They are my patron. I thought they were generating unsurpassed bodhicitta. But it turns out not to be the case. It was just that they offered some money. So they say the intent of such and such a layperson is very great. This person's intent is exceptionally great. As long as you generate the mind to donate money, is that called Samyak Sambodhi? Many people nowadays often say, this person's intent is very great, right? Money isn't everything, but without it, you can't do anything. So Samyak Sambodhi could be explained that way here, right? Otherwise, some people just put on a show of having big aspirations, which actually only feeds their arrogance. If they make a huge donation, we can say they have great generosity, but calling it great intent is a different story. Generally speaking, in Tibetan Buddhism, when we talk about having great intent, it means giving rise to the mind of a bodhisattva or a Buddha. That is true great intent. However, in the Han region nowadays, you often hear people say, this person's intent is so great. Rejoice, rejoice. As a result, the concept of Samyak Sambodhi is being misinterpreted in this way. So we must truly give rise to bodhicitta. The point is that if you do not forsake the unsurpassed view, you will not forsake bodhicitta. Next, let's discuss some differences between Sutrayana and secret mantra. In Sutrayana, it is easy to give up on your bodhicitta. How does it describe Sutrayana here? There are those who hold that the resultant state of Buddha is established only through the strength of the causal path, and that even though bodhicitta has been cultivated, they could still lose their resolve and forsake the path due to self-interests, melancholy towards samsara, discouragement, and the rest. In Sutrayana, you rely on the power of the path, specifically the Sutrayana path. Then you begin your practice and eventually achieve Buddhahood. The belief is that you aren't a real Buddha at the start, but just an ordinary being. By progressing through the 5 paths and 10 bhumis, you slowly use the power of the path to finally manifest the state of a Tathagata. That is their perspective. If that is the case, even though you have generated the unsurpassed bodhicitta, ordinary people often face many challenges along the way. Feelings of selfishness, melancholy towards samsara, and discouragement can easily arise. For example, when Aryadeva was practicing generosity by giving away his eye, one of his eyes was intentionally ruined by the recipient, which led him to feel that satisfying sentient beings is just too difficult, and he felt a moment of discouragement. Similarly, when Shariputra was practicing giving, he also felt discouraged and faint-hearted at one point. There are many such stories showing that, according to the Sutrayana view, during the process of practicing giving or generating bodhicitta, one often encounters selfish thoughts or a deep exhaustion with cyclic existence. In the end, it becomes very easy to abandon the commitment to bodhicitta. In that way, it is possible that these states of mind can cause obstacles toward the cause. Consequently, this easily hinders the actual cause of achieving Buddhahood. If the cause is incomplete, then just like a burned seed will only produce a deficient sprout, Buddhahood will not be accomplished. If there is a problem with your intent or the cause of bodhicitta, it is like having a burnt seed. No fruit can ever grow from it. Likewise, achieving Buddhahood will be delayed, or it will simply not manifest for the time being. This is what happens in such situations. It is clear that if Buddhahood is viewed as that which depends only on personal effort, the mind will be forced to rely only upon contributing circumstances. Consequently, except for having a firm commitment toward the bodhicitta, ordinary individuals will be incapable of gaining enough confidence to never forsake the bodhicitta. So in Sutrayana, the strength of bodhicitta is actually quite fragile. This is because bodhicitta relies entirely on self-effort, yet the strength of one's mind is still dependent on external contributing circumstances. It is like those who become monks or take lay vows. They might start with very sincere and noble intentions, but later on, when they encounter various external circumstances, like old habits and afflictions, those external factors take over. The initial vows of ordinary people often waver and change. In the beginning, someone might say, I will never regress. I will definitely complete a 3-year retreat. But let alone 3 years, their mind starts wavering after just 3 hours. Ordinary beings can only try their best to keep their vows stable. They haven't reached the point where they can guarantee they will never give up, no matter what. This is because their intent relies on external factors and personal effort. Everyone here should be very clear about this. This is why nowadays many people who study secret mantra actually remain quite stable in their views and practice. I'm not just praising our own path. Indeed, secret mantra possesses unique and supreme qualities in terms of its underlying principles, pith instructions, and oral teachings. These instructions point directly to our Buddha nature in a very straightforward and incisive way. Because of this, many people are able to understand it right then and there. Otherwise, if we rely solely on the Sutrayana approach to bodhicitta, we all know it is said to take 3 countless aeons to achieve enlightenment. To liberate infinite sentient beings, one must rely on many external conditions and clear away numerous obstacles. Though you might initially give rise to this mind and even join the monastic order, things might not go as planned during the actual process of cultivation. There is no certainty that you will be able to see the practice through to a successful end. However, secret mantra is different. Why is it different in secret mantra? Because one is not ignorant of the fact that relative and genuine bodhicitta are inseparable. In secret mantra, by relying on the guru's pith instructions and its unique theories, one comes to realize a profound truth. The mind that generates relative bodhicitta to liberate beings and its inseparable essence of purity and evenness are one and the same. These two are as inseparable as fire and its inherent heat. Once you understand this principle, it becomes impossible to abandon relative bodhicitta. Even at the stage of an ordinary being, one can attain a much more stable certainty. This realization occurs even while we are still ordinary people. In ultimate reality, we are already Buddhas, even if we don't appear so in our current state. But our true nature is truly no different from that of a Buddha. At the level of an ordinary being, one can receive prophecy and reach the state of non-regression. In Sutrayana, those of supreme capacity reach this on the path of application. Those of average capacity reach it on the path of seeing. And those of lesser capacity receive the prophecy or certainty of non-regression on the path of meditation. However, in secret mantra, this can happen as early as the path of accumulation. In fact, some people haven't even officially entered the path of accumulation yet. They are still completely ordinary people who haven't entered the path. Yet by relying on the guru's pith instructions, they realize that genuine and relative bodhicitta are inseparable. They understand that all phenomena, whether external objects or the internal mind, are primordially pure and empty. They can grasp this truth right then and there. This is likely why we approach it this way. First, we study Madhyamaka, such as the root stanzas of the middle way, and then we combine that with the pith instructions on the view from great perfection and secret mantra. Once these are combined, no matter what a person's capacity is, they will understand the ultimate reality of all phenomena to varying degrees. This makes it very accessible. Therefore, even at the level of an ordinary being, one can attain a much more stable certainty. That is why it is taught that even an ordinary individual who understands the emptiness of mantra shares the same fortune as a non-returning bodhisattva. So those who truly enter the secret mantra path may appear to be ordinary practitioners, but they are actually non-returning. They share the same fortune with bodhisattvas on the 1st or 8th bhumi. What does it mean to share the same fortune? It means that from that point on, they will never fall back into samsara. Furthermore, they have clearly seen the ultimate truth of all things. In the same way, even though we are still in the stage of ordinary beings and haven't attained the bhumis, we receive the same treatment or hold the same qualifications as a bodhisattva. It is as if we are earning the same salary or annual bonus as a bodhisattva. I'm just joking. I shouldn't explain it so casually, or the Dharma protectors might keep a close eye on me. Mipham Rinpoche once wrote a verse cautioning us to be careful with the secret mantra. Otherwise, the Dharma protectors with 1,000 eyes or 1,000,000,000 eyes will be watching you constantly. With many Dharma protectors overseeing us, we should not treat secret mantra lightly. I use these analogies simply to make it easier to understand. What does sharing the same fortune mean? In secret mantra, it is sometimes said that one shares the same fortune as Samantabhadra. Other times it is said one shares the same fortune as a non-returning bodhisattva. This applies to those of us still on ordinary ground who are attending this secret mantra class. If you truly develop an irreversible certainty that all phenomena are primordially pure and empty, then you have indeed attained the same fortune as a non-returning bodhisattva. This is similar to what is said in Sutrayana. When one encounters the Prajna Paramita, from that moment on, one will not fall into the 3 lower realms. It is like reaching the edge of the forest of samsara. The principle here is quite similar. This is how the emptiness of unsurpassed mantra is the genuine deity of the nature of phenomena. This means that the suchness of unsurpassed mantra is actually the genuine deity of the nature of phenomena. If you realize that all phenomena are truly and primordially equal and pure, this is the true ultimate Manjushri Bodhisattva. It is the ultimate Shakyamuni Buddha and the ultimate Guru Rinpoche. When you fully realize the nature of our mind and the nature of all phenomena, that is the genuine deity of the nature of phenomena. By not forsaking this realization, even all deities who arise as the symbolic mudra will never be forsaken. If we do not abandon the view of purity and evenness, then it is fully established that we are not forsaking all the manifesting deities. What are these deities who arise as the symbolic mudra? They are the ones we see in images such as Manjushri, Avalokiteshvara, or Shakyamuni Buddha. These symbolic mudra appears to beings with pure virtuous roots. They are not the most ultimate level. When Amitabha or other deities appear before us, they are known as the deities who arise as the symbolic mudra. Generally speaking, if someone has a very high realization of the secret mantra view, they don't necessarily need to carry a bunch of statues, stupas, or tankas whenever they depart. Those are all manifesting deities, so it is not necessary to carry them along. If they have already realized the intrinsic nature deity, then they don't necessarily need those external objects wherever they go. Of course, this applies to those with supreme capacity. Personally, I still appreciate those who feel they need all the external supports. That is a safer way to practice. Otherwise, some people might have no real realization at all, yet they arrogantly believe they are at the highest level and have attained the ultimate state. They claim they don't need texts or statues. They only talk about the mind being the deity, about purity and evenness, and the joint practice of Pure Land and mantra. It sounds nice, but do they actually have that realization? Since the inner mind is hidden, it's very hard to tell for sure. Externally speaking, it is fine to maintain these symbolic mudra deities. It is very good to have these deities appearing as symbolic mudras. In reality, however, when one truly possesses this right view, one will not abandon the deity or the symbolic mudras. You do not necessarily need to chant, nor do you need to visualize a Buddha or carry a statue daily. It is not required. People have different capacities. By maintaining the life essence of this view through accomplishments with meditation and pure samaya, I just mentioned purity and evenness. For all our secret mantra samayas, this view of purity and evenness and never abandoning the unsurpassed are essential. All practices are also centered on cultivating this very understanding. So I have explained this to everyone now. I think I have made it clear. I hope you will remember the principles I have shared this time. You should really keep them in mind. Although I personally do not have great realization or profound views, these teachings have been gained over many years of relying on my gurus. These instructions were obtained through personal hardships and should be considered very precious. It might be very difficult to have another opportunity to explain these in the future. Without an explanation, you will not necessarily understand them just by reading the texts. Some people secretly photocopy and read the Guyagarbha Tantra or Lama Yangtik, but I tell them that they will not understand even if they read them. If you just read through it like that, thinking others are listening to the Guyagarbha Tantra, so I will read it too, you will definitely not understand it by reading it on your own. It is very unlikely that you can comprehend these principles on your own. It might take a very long time to even begin to enter the meaning. By maintaining the life essence of this view through accomplishments with meditation and pure samaya, nothing will ever degenerate while everything will remain perfectly pure. If you possess this view, then your samaya will never be impaired. Your practice will also reach perfection and remain pure. At that time, while all these deities appear differently in manifestation, they are of one essence in the ultimate nature. Whether they are wrathful or peaceful, all appearances are inseparable within the ultimate nature. If one has gained confidence in the certainty of the meaning of unsurpassed mantra's nature as it is impossible to impair the root samaya. We can say not impairing the root samaya. The point is, if one has certain conviction in the unsurpassed meaning of secret mantra, then all these samayas will absolutely never be lost. Therefore, never abandoning the unsurpassed is extremely important in one's practice. Since it serves as the right view, one should possess it at all times and in all places. However, some enter through devotion. The previous discussion was about entering through certainty. We have covered entering through certainty. Next, we will discuss entering through devotion. And there should be a brief and a detailed explanation here. We started with the detailed explanation of entering through certainty regarding purity and evenness. The following is the detailed explanation of entering through devotion. The way that those who have entered mantra with devotion might forsake the unsurpassed is as follows. They hear others say secret mantra is supreme, but they do not actually understand it at all. Many people today go for empowerments just because they hear others are going. They go to listen to secret mantra just because others are listening. But why are they actually listening? They have no independent judgment and just follow the crowd. Generally speaking, if you have not received an empowerment, there is no such thing as breaking a samaya. But once you receive an empowerment, there are two ways to accept the secret mantra teachings. One is through certainty, and the other is through devotion. Acceptance based on devotion is easily abandoned. Why is it so easily abandoned? It involves both the view and the conduct of secret mantra. A downfall occurs if, due to lack of faith, one contradicts the profound view of the nature of inseparable purity and evenness, and the fearless conduct of mantra that is congruent with that. This is as explained in the 14 root downfalls. This means that for the profound view of the nature of inseparable purity and evenness we discussed earlier, as well as the fearless conduct of mantra, including the profound view and the very deep actions from the first chapter, such as union and subjugation, which are difficult for ordinary people to accept. If you lack faith, consider them unreasonable, and then abandon them, then you commit a root downfall of secret mantra. This is actually closely related to what is taught in all the 14 root samayas. The following explains this close relationship. What does it mean to abandon it, and what does it mean to lack faith? Below, the 14 root downfalls are explained in connection with this one, not abandoning the unsurpassed. The rule of not abandoning the unsurpassed is combined here with the other 14 root downfalls. I will explain them together. Two further root downfalls are to doubt the meaning of the universe and inhabitants to be the pure nature of the deity, by thinking that this is taught solely as a means to guide disciples to be tamed, and is not actually the case, or being ambivalent and full of doubt. This is one point. In other words, secret mantra originally teaches that the entire universe and all living beings are primordially pure. They are the pure land and the very essence of the deity. The Gujagaba Tantra explains it this way. But some people think this teaching of purity is simply a way to guide certain individuals by telling them everything is pure. They believe that things are definitely not this pure, or perhaps they are not pure. They become half-hearted and full of doubt toward this, or even abandon it entirely. This is extremely important, so please pay close attention. Otherwise, some people with limited wisdom or a lack of strong faith may falter. They may think, although secret mantra speaks of the inseparable unity of purity and evenness, it surely cannot be so. It seems impossible for everything to be pure. If you harbor such doubts, this is the first point. The second point concerns the meaning of evenness. As we discussed earlier, evenness means that the essence of all phenomena is empty. Emptiness is what we call the meaning of evenness. Regarding this meaning of evenness, by clinging to the meaning of evenness as something with characteristics and reference, which is completely contrary to great evenness, this means treating it as something with referential characteristics, like a simple emptiness or a state of mere nothingness that is completely void. By perceiving it with such referential characteristics, one concludes it is not what Mantrayana describes, a great emptiness free from all fabrications. One thinks that it is absolutely impossible. These constitute root downfalls by virtue of opposing the view of mantra and thereby absolutely preventing the genuine nature of mantra from arising in the stream of mind. Everyone should be aware of this. If you doubt these two views of primordial evenness and primordial purity, or if you develop the mindset that phenomena are definitely not primordially pure, then the certainty arising in your stream of mind will be completely in conflict with the genuine reality described in Mantrayana. Therefore, such a person commits a root downfall of the secret mantra. Regarding this, for instance, in the Hinayana precepts, committing a root downfall is analyzed through four factors: the basis, motivation, action, and completion. In the case of the first samaya, not abandoning the unsurpassed, the first factor is the basis. The essence of the nature of phenomena, which is the inseparable unity of purity and evenness, serves as the basis. What then is the motivation? The motivation refers to harboring intense doubt, wrong views, or the intention to abandon this unity of purity and evenness. Regarding this intent to abandon, generally in Mantrayana, if we divide the 12 hours of a day into three parts, each part of roughly 4 hours constitutes one session. If before the day ends or within a single session one does not apply an antidote or feel regret, the downfall is fully incurred in the stream of mind once that session has passed. What is the action? It is completed entirely within the mind, not through the body or speech. In the Pratimoksha vows, certain precepts are not necessarily violated by mind alone. Many of those rely on physical actions or speech to complete the downfall. However, in the Bodhisattva and Mantrayana vows, physical or verbal actions are not required. The root downfall can be broken purely through the power of the mind. For example, regarding the aspirational bodhicitta in the Bodhisattva vows, if you abandon it and think, "From now on, I will never help another sentient being," if you give rise to such an intention and fail to apply an antidote within that session, then you have broken a root bodhisattva vow. In this case, no other action was needed. The downfall is completed the moment that thought is fully formed in the mind. If you fail to repent within that period of the day, once the night has passed, you have committed a root downfall. Mantrayana works in the same way. The first samaya is broken entirely within the mind. You don't need to say aloud that nothing is equal. And physically, there might not even be anything specific to do. But it is just like when the three jewels were destroyed during the Cultural Revolution. If one claims that things are not primordially pure and equal, and also engages in various actions that disparage the three jewels, that is certainly an act of abandoning the unsurpassed. So the question here is, when is the first root samaya of the Guhyagarbha Tantra actually broken? For those who have never entered the secret mantra, there is no such thing as breaking a samaya. But after entering the secret mantra, some people might falter. Many people nowadays have this attitude: secret mantra is so incredibly deep. Though I have received empowerments, I won't study it anymore. It is not ultimate. When they say it is not ultimate, it is not because they have used wisdom to find some proof that it is not ultimate. Not at all. It is because their own minds are very inferior, or their wisdom is extremely shallow. Therefore, they think what secret mantra teaches is unreasonable. Some even switch to the Pure Land school and say, "I'm not studying anything else anymore." So all of you here really must be careful. If you stop studying any secret mantra, believing that its teachings are unreasonable, on one hand, you have developed wrong views in your stream of mind. On the other hand, if you have already abandoned the secret mantra, you will definitely fall into the Vajra hell. This isn't just my opinion. No matter which master you ask, there is no other way around it. No one can save you from that. Just as with the Pratimoksha vows, if you break a root precept, you will fall into hell. The same logic applies to secret mantra. You must be very careful regarding this. This time, it is very easy for many of you to receive empowerments. But within the context of the secret mantra, if you abandon it because you do not understand its view and conduct, there are grave consequences. I've heard of such people before who used to study secret mantra, but later said, "I'm stopping now and moving to the Sutrayana." I feel that the teachings of secret mantra are unreasonable or perhaps not ultimate. I think Sutrayana is better. If you claim that the secret mantra is not ultimate, you must realize its core is the view of the inseparable unity of purity and evenness. If you doubt or abandon this view of the inseparable unity of purity and evenness, from that moment on, you have incurred the downfall of breaking your samaya within your stream of mind. At that point, whether you pray to Amitabha or anyone else, no one can save you. So I hope all of you here, having received empowerments and entered the secret mantra, will keep this firmly in mind for the rest of your lives and never abandon the secret mantra. Even if your practice is not very good, the teachings never state that poor practice alone breaks your samaya. This is not mentioned in the 5 root samayas nor in the 14 root downfalls. You might just be very lazy. Some say, my karmic obscurations are too heavy. I sleep 8 or 9 hours a day. I'm not a fit vessel for secret mantra. But that doesn't prove anything. Even if you sleep 12 hours a day, secret mantra never says that heavy sleepers are unfit for these teachings. So I don't think that is a major issue. The real problem is when people don't understand treating it like finding a job. I see this often, especially in the Han region. Many people grew up without faith and only found it later in life. For those who come to the Dharma midway, it's often not very stable. To be honest, those who have faith from childhood at least possess a very firm and steady conviction. But those who come midway due to various circumstances often act like they are at a workplace where they no longer want to stay. When the relationship with the boss turns sour, they just leave. In the worldly realm, you can change your workplace or your boss anytime. However, in the secret mantra, Vajradhara Buddha never gave you such an option. If you act this way, you will ultimately face the punishment yourself. Unless you believe that cause and effect do not exist at all, but as far as I know, there is truly no escaping the web of karma. Therefore, I hope those of you present will never abandon the secret mantra, otherwise no one can save you. Some might say, I'm not going anymore, I'm not studying this. When they experience a bit of friction with a particular guru or specific Dharma friends, they declare they are quitting. Even if you stop studying, the earth will continue to exist exactly as it is. The billions of people in this world will keep on living. Your individual decision to stop doesn't really matter to anyone else. It won't cause the slightest harm to the secret mantra, not even as much as a single hair. You aren't someone so incredibly important that your absence changes the Dharma. Some people do this intentionally, saying, I'm quitting. You better watch out or I'll leave the secret mantra. Who are you trying to threaten? It's your own loss. So please be careful and think this through very clearly. As mentioned, one downfall is to doubt and abandon the meaning of emptiness. The other is to doubt and abandon the meaning of primordial purity. Both of these constitute a root downfall in the secret mantra. If I recall correctly, abandoning emptiness is the 11th root downfall, and abandoning the meaning of purity is the 9th root downfall. That is how they are listed among the 14 root downfalls. Next, we will discuss the following. Since it is contradictory to the superb conduct of mantra to harm one's body, fail to accept samaya substances, lose the white bodhicitta fluid, disparage females, and not subjugate an object to be subjugated. The points I discussed previously were related to the view of the secret mantra. These next few points are related to the conduct of the secret mantra. For example, the 8th root downfall states that one must not mistreat the 5 aggregates. If we mistreat the 5 aggregates, we commit a root downfall. However, great masters like Jetsong Kappa and Rongzom Pandita have explained this. Practicing the Dharma through the 12 ascetic virtues, lay vows, or the 8-branch fast precepts does not violate the root samayas of the secret mantra. Some might mistakenly say, don't practice austerities, that would break the samaya. Just eat meat every day and you'll be fine. In fact, they simply don't understand the underlying principle. Practicing austerities for the sake of the Dharma is perfectly fine in secret mantra. Even if it looks like you are physically enduring some hardship, this does not constitute breaking the vows. Next is failing to accept samaya substances. For instance, there are the 5 meats and 5 nectars. If you clearly have the capacity to accept them but refuse, it results in a violation of the samaya. This is the 13th root downfall. Then there is lose the white bodhicitta fluid. Regarding the abandonment of bodhicitta, there are 7 exceptional cases where it is permitted. Otherwise, it must never be abandoned. The bodhicitta mentioned here refers to the white bodhicitta, commonly known as white seminal fluid. This type of bodhicitta must not be forsaken, primarily for lay practitioners. Monastics generally do not have this issue. However, if it occurs, it would be a sanghava offense. For lay practitioners, except for those observing celibacy, the question is whether a lay bodhisattva would forsake this white bodhicitta. In the commentaries of past masters, forsaking here means believing that seminal fluid is not a basis for bodhicitta. Abandoning it with a mind of contempt or disparagement constitutes a root downfall. Alternatively, if one considers the non-emission of seminal fluid as a form of liberation or purity, similar to the views held by the Maheshvara school, and maintains that view, it also constitutes a root downfall. If such non-emission is viewed as liberation, then for a layman with secret mantra vows, it would be impossible to maintain the root samaya. That would be a mistake. Some masters have provided this specific explanation. Disparaging women is the 14th root downfall. Some great masters believe this means one must not disparage women in general. Otherwise, among women, such as Tara and Guanyin, there are many female bodhisattvas. If you disparage women as a whole, you are disparaging these holy beings. There is such a saying. If that were the case, one could argue there are also many male emanations among men. Yet the precepts do not specifically establish a rule against disparaging men. But in reality, not forsaking the white bodhicitta represents skillful means. One must not abandon skillful means. Not disparaging women actually refers to the reliance on such mudras to give rise to the wisdom of great bliss. Relying on these feminine mudras is extremely important. Therefore, from the perspective of giving rise to the wisdom of the inseparable unity of emptiness and bliss, women are very important. This is why they must not be disparaged. If one clearly possesses the capacity to subjugate but fails to do so, then this also violates the root samaya. This is the 10th precept. All of these are related to the conduct of the secret mantra. The root downfall occurs if, with disgust, one permanently rejects these activities that are to be accepted. One thereby prevents one's opportunity to internalize the profound conduct of mantra. Therefore, it is a root downfall. These concern the aspect of conduct, so everyone should be aware of these conducts in the secret mantra. On one hand, regarding what should be accepted, when you clearly have the capacity, you must accept it. If you fail to do so, you have broken a root samaya of the secret mantra. However, all of this is inherently related to your view and conduct. If your view and conduct have absolutely nothing to do with the purity and evenness of secret mantra, then you had better not pretend to have such a view, otherwise it becomes crazy conduct. There is a world of difference between the crazy conduct of secret mantra and the crazy conduct of the unrealized. Therefore, practitioners of secret mantra must ensure their conduct at the very beginning is completely in accordance with the bodhisattva and pratimoksha vows. This is very important. Otherwise, some ignorant people today mistakenly believe that anything goes in secret mantra. Some women often ask certain masters, "Am I a dakini? You haven't even learned how to practice the basic 5 preliminary practices, yet you ask if you're a dakini?" That's why I told some gurus the other day. In the future, at our Han Chinese monastic division of Vajra Mara subduing section, especially among the female practitioners, if anyone uses such impure language, you should record it for me. In the future, whether it's about transmitting secret mantra or expulsion, there are many circumstances to consider. We need to see if someone is a true emanation dakini, she would have mastered the view of purity and evenness without any selfish attachment. In such a case, I certainly couldn't say for sure that she isn't. Otherwise, it would be disparaging women, and I fear breaking the root samaya. But clearly, many are just driven by various afflictions. Some may even have mental issues. A while ago, some were frequently sending all sorts of messages. Even after several warnings, they continued. Eventually, we had no choice but to revoke their permits to attend secret mantra teachings. There's probably something going on mentally as well. Recently, many news reports say that among China's 1.3 billion people, roughly 100 million people suffer from some form of mental health disorder. It's the same story here for us. So, out of every 13 people, one is to have some mental issue. 1 in 13, if that's the case. These mental health issues and illnesses manifest in all sorts of ways. In the future, if you truly cannot maintain the pratimoksha vows, then that is just how it is. But it is best not to use secret mantra as a cover. Otherwise, it is very frightening to talk this way, using secret mantra, calling yourself a dakini. Nowadays, some fake tulkas and fake masters also use secret mantra as a front, claiming, "I am the emanation of so-and-so, and you are the emanation of so-and-so. You are the emanation of so-and-so. We have a connection from past lives. You were my dakini in my previous life. You were my whatever in my previous life." This kind of secret mantra is also destroying the Buddha Dharma in the Han region. There are many people like this. So I hope that for everyone in our academy, even if your own practice and capacity are limited, before you have reached a certain realization, you should act accordingly. If you are a monastic, act like a monastic. If you are a lay practitioner, act like a lay practitioner. Otherwise, it's not good for your guru or your dharma friends. In short, my point is, don't use secret mantra concepts like so-called union or so-called subjugation as an excuse to destroy your own precepts. This is completely improper. The remaining root downfalls are established in reliance upon first, the Vajra master from whom teachings on the profound meaning of mantra have been directly received. This is the first of the secret mantra root precepts. Second, the Vajra relatives who uphold the meaning of mantra. This is the third, I believe. And the sentient beings to be tamed by mantra. This is the 12th or perhaps the 10th. One who keeps secrets so as not to lose the secret mantra lineage. This is the 7th. Not revealing secrets. The teachings of the victorious ones that either directly or indirectly reveal mantra's meaning. And the speech of the Vajra master. This is the second secret mantra root precept. And the many philosophies taught in order to discern the distinctions of mantra teachings. This should be the 6th secret mantra root precept. These are all posited as root downfalls because they are connected with the exalted view and conduct of mantra itself, making all of them significant points that must be cherished. If one fails to cherish them, then one destroys the secret mantra. For this reason, they are established as root downfalls. Everyone should understand this. The preceding points were the secret mantra root samayas, specifically related to conduct and view. What we just discussed involves both one's view and one's conduct. For example, these are not forsaking the Vajracharya and not forsaking secret mantra dharma friends. A secret mantra acharya is one who must have realized the inseparable unity of purity and evenness. And those who uphold this view of purity and evenness are your secret mantra dharma friends. Then there is the 12th precept, having compassion for sentient beings. Also, not revealing secrets and not violating the Tathagata's commands. Furthermore, not disparaging any of the various schools, not even non-Buddhist ones. Now, regarding these points, are all 14 root samayas covered here? I think they are pretty much all included. I recall there are 14 in total throughout the text. All right, moving on. Therefore, if one does not respect the guru, guard the instructions of mantra, and so forth, the fault is extremely grave. In short, regarding the precepts mentioned above, the guru is actually very important. If one does not respect the guru and does not guard the secret mantra instructions transmitted by the Tathagata and the guru, then the negative consequences are extremely severe. This is because these are established and taught in all the tantras. If one contradicts them, this becomes a violation of the conduct of mantra. This is taught in all the tantras and other pith instructions. If one violates the guru's instructions or the samayas I just mentioned, then one is not in accord with the secret mantra. Therefore, all of these are also contrary to the conduct of mantra. That is why it is taught that these 14 root downfalls alone are in extreme contradiction with the view and conduct of mantra. If one engages in the contradictions I mentioned, it is easy to violate the 14 root downfalls. That is to say, regarding the view of the inseparable unity of purity and evenness, if one fails to realize it or acts in opposition to it, then indeed you might end up violating the 14 root samayas to varying degrees. Therefore, even if one is incapable of comprehending the profound view and conduct of mantra, these samayas must still never be disparaged, because that would bring about the inexplicable fault of abandoning the dharma. This is very important. Everyone must pay attention. Even if you lack the profound view of secret mantra or cannot perform such profound conduct, at the very least you must never disparage them. As I said earlier, it is not easy to obtain a human life in this world. Since you've already entered the secret mantra, it's best not to withdraw. A while ago, some people told me during an interview, your secret mantra gurus still have some problems. In the beginning, when giving empowerments and teaching, he appeared as a monk. Later, we found out he has a wife and a son, so it's improper and he's not a real secret mantra guru. When someone asked me this, I replied, perhaps the guru was improper, but you disciples are also at fault. Even when ordinary people make friends or look for a partner, they observe first. They check if that person already has a wife or children. That's just what people do. If a person rushes into a marriage without observing them first, and then find out things are wrong later, it's not necessarily all their fault. It likely has to do with the disciple's own failure to observe the teacher first. To be honest, many people nowadays would be better off not rushing into the secret mantra at the start. But since you've entered, I assume you were in your right mind. As long as you are mentally sound, then no one forced you to take an empowerment or forced you to seek the secret mantra. No one did anything like that. If you entered the path while of sound mind, and then you choose to withdraw, that's not the fault of the Dharma. The secret mantra is not something to be disparaged by someone of such inferior capacity. If that were really the case, we could debate it face to face. You could tell us why you think secret mantra is unreasonable. We could debate through Buddhist logic with any number of witnesses. There would be no problem at all. But if you rush in at the start and then quit because you can't succeed in practice, that is not the fault of the secret mantra. Yet by doing so, you would have completely lost your way from that point on. So what the text says here is, if you abandon or disparage it, then for you, everything is lost. You could say that. If empowerment has been received, then the root downfall would occur. There's nothing more to say about that. As long as you have received empowerment, you should think, though I currently is unable to immediately internalize the profound conduct of mantra as being without contradiction, if you have received empowerment, you should think to yourself, although I have received empowerment, certain profound conducts of the secret mantra, such as accepting the 5 meats and 5 nectars, or union and subjugation, are hard to even imagine right now, let alone actually doing them. In that case, you should just make an aspiration in your heart. May I be able to practice this conduct as much as possible one day. I must have this kind of conviction and must never turn against it. If you turn against it and at some point say things like, this is impure or this is illogical. In fact, the secret mantra is not something for people of our capacity to abandon. If we can't even work out a basic 3-mode syllogism in logic, it's not that easy for us to just dismiss the Vajra speech of the secret mantra. So if there are certain conducts that you really can't accept right now, just make a silent aspiration in your heart. In the Tibetan region, things are actually much better. When people there see imagery of union or other Vajrayana elements, I've never heard of anyone losing faith in the secret mantra or refusing to study it because of them. There is no such tradition. But now among people in some other cities, this situation indeed occurs. Everyone must be careful, otherwise it is truly pitiable. Even if one has not gained sincere conviction in the profound view, one should think, this is the ultimate profound mystery of the Vajra vehicle. I pray that it may arise within my own stream of mind as much as possible. One must uphold it with faith and understanding. It is unacceptable to reject the view by claiming it is incorrect. You shouldn't say it shouldn't be like this. I think the Sutrayana is very pure, or practicing Amitabha Buddha is very pure. Previously in our academy, among those who had received secret mantra empowerments, there were a few individuals like this. Later, I could only sigh. Beyond that, there is no other way. It is very pitiable. No matter if you then practice Pure Land, Zen, or any other path, you will definitely fall into the Vajra hell. There is simply no other way. So regarding what I mentioned earlier about conduct, there are some conducts in secret mantra that we might not be able to accept right now, but do not give rise to wrong views and do not abandon it. Do not forsake it, but do not blindly imitate it either. Don't think I can also perform subjugation and grab a kala to see if you can kill an enemy, or think that you also need to find a dakini, and so on. If you do this, you've completely misunderstood the meaning of secret mantra, and the fault is even greater. There is no need to disparage it. It is not something within our capacity to disparage. Then, regarding the view, if you cannot master the profound view of secret mantra right now, just make aspirations and pray to the lineage masters and to Vajradhara Buddha. May I soon master the view of the inseparable unity of purity and evenness. I believe many of those with sharp faculties should be able to understand the literal meaning. You will also understand this when studying logic in the middle way. We should all be people who can grasp the meaning through the words. As for this profound meaning, although the meaning is very deep and full, realization is difficult. Gaining a general comprehension and understanding is not that hard. Therefore, one must accept it with devotion. One must never discard it by saying things like, it is not so. This principle should also be followed as stated in the concise Chakra Samvara Tantra. When the profound doctrine is explained, even if devotion does not arise, when such profound dharma is taught, specifically the teachings on emptiness and purity, some people might find it hard to truly accept because they haven't accumulated enough merit in the past. They are unable to receive it fully in this life or develop irreversible faith in it. Nevertheless, it must never be disparaged. One must recall the inconceivable nature of phenomena, even if you cannot fully accept it. Whether in terms of conduct or view, you must absolutely not slander or disparage it. Instead, you should think to yourself, the nature of phenomena is inconceivable. All phenomena are inconceivable. Just as it is taught in the Uttara Tantra Shastra, we cannot even see material objects exactly as they are, let alone the profound meaning of the nature of phenomena. Take the things we can see. For instance, we can't see how many atoms a vase is composed of. That is simply impossible for us to see. Or if we consider the discursive thoughts arising in the person next to us, we have no idea. This shows that my eyes, ears, nose, tongue, and my discursive mind are very limited. The scope of what I know is extremely narrow. Therefore, we should think, I cannot slander these teachings. In fact, regarding secret mantra, some people nowadays often develop wrong views toward things like union. As I told them the other day, as it says in the Book of Changes, the interaction of yin and yang is called the Tao. Regarding yin and yang, such as this and that, or dark and light, this is a natural law of all phenomena. Taoism also says that yin and yang are indispensable because our minds produce attachments. When we see a man or a woman, we insist on perceiving something impure. But in reality, it is not like that at all. This is a law of all things, like the sunny side and the shady side of a mountain, this and that, left and right. Everything in the world is a union of yin and yang, like the sun and the moon. This is consistent with the views of Taoism and Confucianism. And Buddhism says the same. Male and female are entirely part of the natural law of appearance and emptiness. Since they represent a natural law, it does not mean something is impure. Therefore, regarding the true nature of reality, all conducts and symbols, we haven't mastered them yet, so we must understand that the nature of phenomena is inconceivable. Whoever fails to accept it will fail to know the nature of phenomena. Why is that? Because these are not within my level of realization. My discursive thoughts are very limited. And as for my wisdom, I can't even memorize 3 short treatises. I finish memorizing in the morning and forget by the afternoon. I memorize in the afternoon and forget by tomorrow. I memorize a text this year, and next year not a single sentence remains. So you see, my realization is very limited, let alone mastering the profound meaning of the nature of phenomena. Think about how the great masters of the past realized it. I am such an ignorant person. Am I in any position to slander these profound secret mantra teachings? You should think in this way. The perfect Buddhas and their heirs are always known by all awakened ones. Thus, since this is similar, careful consideration must be applied to this. One should think, I may not understand it, but those who truly know the meaning of the nature of phenomena, such as the perfectly enlightened Tathagatas of the past, and the Bodhisattvas like Manjushri and Avalokiteshvara, as well as masters like Vimalamitra, Lord Atisha, and Jnana Sutra, along with all the great masters and patriarchs of both Sutrayana and Mantrayana, they fully understand this profound meaning of the nature of phenomena. I pray that their blessings may enter my mind stream so that I may also realize the true nature of all phenomena. May I never give rise to wrong thoughts or wrong views. It is very important that we pray frequently. Ordinary beings often have negative or discursive thoughts, which can eventually destroy their commitment to the path. Therefore, I hope you will use this correct way of thinking. By doing so, our study of the secret mantra will truly provide us with protection. Otherwise, if you just receive an empowerment and gulp down the nectar, bowl after bowl, and then scramble to get more nectar, actually getting the nectar itself is not the most important thing. It's perfectly fine whether you get a drink or not. The most critical thing is to understand that all phenomena are primordially pure and primordially empty. I've repeated this so many times just so you'll take it to heart. So please, all of you should contemplate this carefully. That's all for today.
Bandara Badma Sodargye